Hello again. In this lesson we'll practice calculating statistics using a computer. The fact that we need a computer to analyze our data may be self-explanatory because obviously we have large sets of data that require analyzed by computer and not by hand. A second advantage is that we can synthesize, summarize our information and create tables, histograms, graphs or plots. And something that you need to know is that one of the best options for test statistical analysis is IBM's Statistical Product and Service Solutions, also known as SPSS. However, if we don't have this program or if we find it too complicated to use, Excel can also be a good solution, and in Excel we can calculate basic statistics that we will be needing to analyze the data from our tests. This is what SPSS looks like. If you see, it is a spreadsheet that looks pretty much like Excel. However, SPSS is a very powerful tool for statistical analysis. The main advantage of SPSS is that with just the touch of a button, with a single click, you can calculate all your descriptive statistics. Another advantage is that your descriptive statistics also come with a histogram where you can see the distribution of your scores, and which is very useful when you want to illustrate the findings of your research. Given that SPSS is a very expensive program and it's a little complicated to use, in this lesson I will be teaching you how to calculate descriptive statistics using Excel. Now the first thing that I want you to know is that we're going to be analyzing two types of data in Excel. First of all, we're going to be looking at data from test results, and secondly, we're going to be analyzing data that comes from assessment instruments such as questionnaires that were used for surveys. I would like to start by showing you the formulas for calculating the descriptive statistics in Excel. First of all, I want to imagine that the data that I want to analyze is located in the range of cells from A1 to Z1. That means that when I am going to use my formulas, I will use the range of cells. But depending on your data, you will choose a different range of cells based on the cells that you want to analyze. Okay? Now the second point is that you can use small case or capitals in the formulas as long as you are consistent. That means that if you use capitals, you have to use capitals all over. And if you use small case, you have to use small case all over the formula as well. Another thing that I need to tell you is that the formulas are in Spanish because your software is Spanish speaking software. Okay? So this is the formula for the mean, the formula for the mode, and the formula for the median. If you see, we have the words that indicate the operation, the statistic that you're going to calculate, and then we have in parentheses the range of cells that you want to include in this operation. Now, the formulas for calculating the measures of variability are as follows. First of all, for the range, we need first to calculate the maximum and the minimum. Okay, and this is how we calculate the maximum. Then we're going to calculate the minimum, and this is the formula for the minimum. And afterwards, what we're going to do is obviously to calculate the range by subtracting the maximum minus the minimum. Okay, and for the standard deviation, you're going to find that it's much easier than calculating it by hand. The formula is just the one that you can see on your screen, this first, and then the range of cells. So these are the formulas for both the descriptives of central tendency and those of variability. Let us now see how we can analyze data and calculate descriptive statistics from objective test results. First of all, we need to enter the data, and in this case, unless you have a digital scanner, you have to do it by hand one by one. So you're going to enter the results on the spreadsheet for every test taker and for every item on your test. You have to remember that in this case, because we're analyzing objective tests, you will enter 1 for a correct answer and 0 for an incorrect answer. Once you have entered all of your data, you can add the result for each individual student. And once all of your totals have been calculated, you can then proceed to estimating the descriptive statistics for your set of data. We're going to look at a specific example. I want to show you with an Excel file, step by step, the kind of things that you need to do to calculate your descriptive statistics from objective tests in Excel. This is the first example, and it corresponds to the results of a listening comprehension test. So I want you to see that if we see horizontally, we have the number of test takers in a group. In this case, there were 20 test takers in total. Now, if you see vertically, you will see the number of items that we had in this section of the test, which was the listening comprehension section. There are in total 10 items. Now, the numbers that you see in the middle correspond to the answers that the students or the test takers gave. If you remember, in an objective test, a correct answer is marked with number 1 and an incorrect answer is marked with number 0. So every 1 and every 0 corresponds to a correct or an incorrect answer. And if you see here, for example, test taker number 1 got the first item correct, then he or she got the second item incorrect, then the third item correct, and so on and so forth. Now, the first thing that we need to do before we calculate the statistics is to calculate the total scores that every student obtained. So we're going to do that by entering this formula here, right? We're going to select the cells that contain the information that we want to include in our formula, okay? So let me do that again because this thing moved. Problem is, when the things move, you have to do things again. So you select, okay? That is the formula. You can see it here, okay? That's the number of cells that contain the data that I want from B8, okay, this one, to B17, okay, which is this one. So I just push enter and I got my results. My results are number 6. That means that this student got a score of 6 out of 10 items. Now the only thing that I need to do for the others, I just copy and paste, okay, to get the other results. So we have now the total results for this sample. This is the score for student number 1, this is the score for number 2, the score for number 3, and so on. Remember, there were 10 items, so for example, test taker number 20 got 10 out of 10, got all of the items correct. And on the other hand, we can see that some test takers obtained a lower score. For example, test taker number 2 got just a score of 5. Now let's calculate the descriptive statistics here. Okay, so here we go, and we're going to start by calculating the mean. Okay, so the mean, we enter the formula, if you remember, promedio, and then we're going to select the cells, and in this case the cells that I'm interested in are these ones here. So I select them, close the parentheses. You can see the formula there, okay? That's the formula, okay? You see that's the cells. The cells, you can see that they have been selected. I want the average of the total scores that the students have. And so my mean is 6.7. That is the mean score of all of the students that we have here, the 20 students. Now let's see if there is a mode. Okay, we're going to calculate again using the formula MODA, and then again we select the cells. If you know the number of the cells, the only thing that you have to do is to enter it there. I'm going to see it now, and then later we're just going to write it down without selecting the cells. If you see it's B18, U18, okay? That's the range of cells, B18, U18. Here we go. So the mode is 6. So most of the students, you know, the most repeated score is 6. So if you see from the mean and the mode, we can see that the results were not very good for these students. Let's take a look at the median, okay? Then again, Diana, and if I remember, it was B18 through U18. Okay, you can see how my cells are selected, okay? And then enter. So the median is 6.5. So right here, I am seeing that the results that my students obtain are not very good. Now let's look at the maximum, the minimum, the range, and the standard deviation. The maximum is B18 through U18, right? There it is. The maximum was 10. Okay, we can see it here. So there was one student who got all of the answers correct. Let's look at the minimum. The minimum, B18 through U18. There it is. The minimum was 5. So this means that the range was 5, but I'm going to teach you how to calculate it, because sometimes the numbers will be big and you will not be able to do a simple subtraction. So the range is resta máximo. Okay, let me do it again. Igual a máximo menos mínimo. Push enter. So if you see, the range is 5. So finally, we can see that there was a big difference. A range is very big, because if the total is 10, 5 points of range is really big. That means that there were students who did great and there were students who did really bad. Finally, the standard deviation. So the formula is this best, then again B18 through U18, and here it is. There you go. So this is the standard deviation. I may want to reduce the decimal points to to visualize the number like more clearly. I'm going to reduce it to 2 decimals. So the standard deviation is 1.45. That means that I can later use the standard deviation to see which of the students did like exceptionally well, which ones did well, which ones did, you know, like normally, like standard, like regular, and which students did badly or very, very badly. Okay, so this is the way that we calculate descriptive statistics in Excel for an objective test. Later you're going to do a practice exercise, but this is basically the way that we do it. Now let's look at a different set of data, the one that was collected from assessment instruments such as questionnaires. In this case, then again, we need to enter the data, and unless you have again a digital scanner, we need to enter the results one by one for each of the items in the questionnaire and for each participant in our group. We need to remember that in this case, the numbers that we will enter will correspond to the options that the participants selected in their questionnaire. And also we need to make sure that when a scale is not numerical, we have to change it to express it in numerical terms. For example, if we have this rating scale where we have 4 points, pésimo, malo, regular, bueno, excelente, well, we're going to enter here, adjust the numbers 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 depending on what the participants selected. That means that we're going to enter the responses, the numbers that each of our participants selected in their questionnaire. Once we have entered all of the data, the next thing that we need to do is to calculate the descriptive statistics, but in this case it is going to be for all of the items or the categories in our instrument. And also something else that we need to remember is that the results that we're going to obtain will be interpreted in terms of the scale that we use. For example, in the previous scale, a mean of 2 will mean that the participants are rating something as malo. So that is the way in which we're going to analyze the information from an assessment instrument, and we're going to be doing an exercise like using Excel to analyze, to calculate the descriptive statistics from an assessment instrument. But I want to show you first the questionnaire that will be used as the example for the data that we're going to analyze. This was taken from real life because when I was in charge of evaluating the teachers in something that was called Tronco Común Universitario of the BUAP, we had the teachers' competencies assessed. So we used this instrument that the students had to fill out in order to express their opinions about their teachers, and we have basically two main elements that we assess: the quality of the lesson and the personal teacher characteristics. So if you see, this is basically a rating scale. It has 5 points: number 1, pésimo; number 2, malo; number 3, regular; number 4, bueno; number 5, excelente. And then the students need to mark the number that corresponds to their opinion about the teachers. For example, number 1, el contenido de la clase y los materiales son apropiados. And then if I think that, my teacher is outstanding, I like the materials and I like how he teaches the content of the lesson, so I'm going to circle number 5. If I think the opposite, I will circle number 1. Or if I just think he's doing good but nothing extraordinary, I will circle number 3. So this is going to be the example, and I want you to pay a lot of attention to how we're going to analyze the information from this questionnaire in Excel. We gave this questionnaire to 508 students, so we need to analyze the results in the computer and see what the results mean. In other words, according to the students, are the teachers good or bad? The answer is coming in a few minutes when we look at the results of the analysis. Here we go. This is a second example, and in this case we have the results from a survey using a questionnaire. Now, first of all, let me tell you, the questionnaire, if you remember, assess lesson quality, and we have the different elements like contents and materials, the sequence, pace, the use of examples, and so on. We also had another section of teacher characteristics in which we included punctual attendance, accessibility, knowledge of subject, and so on and so forth. Now, if you remember, our scale was from 1 to 5, where number 1 was really, really bad and number 5 was outstanding. Okay, a middle point, which is regular or average. And so we enter all of the different participants. This is the number of participants, the people who responded the questionnaire. Okay, so this corresponds to one questionnaire by one person. And if you see, in this case, we enter the number that the students circle in the questionnaire. So we can see here that participant number 1 rated his or her teacher as number 4 in contents of materials. In other words, the student thinks that the teacher is good at using materials and at delivering the content of the lesson. And so different numbers represent the different opinions that the students have. If you see, for example, as far as the practice opportunities are concerned, the same student thinks that his teacher or her teacher is bad. Okay, so we have all of the answers here. This is one student, this is another student, and so on. Now, we need to make sense of this information. We need to analyze the information. We need to process the information, calculate the statistics, and then be able to say what the results mean. Okay? And if you say the way that we have this information, it is impossible to read, impossible to interpret, because there are too many numbers and we don't know exactly how we can interpret those numbers. So in order to be able to understand what the numbers mean, we need to calculate the descriptive statistics. So in this set of data, we have information for 508 students, as you can see. There is just too much information. So we need to calculate then the descriptive statistics so that we know what these results mean. And then we can see what are the aspects that our teachers need to improve in their teaching practices. So let's see. Let's look at number 1. Okay. Number 1 is content and materials. We have it here. So we're going to calculate the statistics for content and materials. Let's look at the cells with information. This is the first cell is, if you see, is B4. Okay. B4. And the last cell is SO4. B4, SO4. So let's calculate. Okay, we can see that my cells are selected. If you see, there's a little line here. So I am selecting all of the data that I need to calculate the mean for the first one. So for the content and the materials, the students that were assessed by the students in this sample got 3.6, which is not very bad. Okay, so I'm going to reduce the decimals. I'm gonna just leave it in 2 decimals, 3.65. Now to do the rest, the only thing that I need to do is to copy and paste the results. There we have the results, as you can see. Okay, those are the results of the mean. You can see that in some cases, like this one, the teachers did better, 4.28. Let's see what it is. 4. Target language used. So that means that the students consider that the students consider that the teachers have a really good level of the target language, at least in this sample. So I'm going to do the same for the other part. I just copy and paste. Okay, and there it is. If you see in this second section, the students obtain better results, except for this one. Let's see what it is. The one where they got a lower score is motivation skills. So apparently the students don't think that the teachers are very good at motivating them. Okay, so anyway, this is the mean. We know what the mean is now, and we have an estimation. I think basically all of the results here are pretty good, because number 4 is good, if you remember, and some of them go beyond 4. They get like closer to 4.5, for example. Okay, and in some cases they got lower results. Let's see what the mode says. So then again, mode, and then it was B4, right, through SO4. There it is. I can see I can always verify that my cells are selected. Check it out. My cells are selected, okay? So the mode is 3. So this means that the number that the students circled the most frequently was number 3, okay? So let's see what are the modes for the other aspects that we assessed here, okay? If you see in some cases the mode was 5, so this was really good. These are really good results because this means that in this aspect, which is target language use, most of the students, the number that they selected the most was number 5. So they thought that the use of the target language by teachers was outstanding. Then let's do the same for the other results. We just paste. Here we go. Okay, there you go. There we have the results. Okay. And then again here, it's incredible to see that the teachers got really good results because this means that the number that was circled most often was number 5, and number 5 means outstanding. So the students have a very positive opinions about the teacher. Let's look at the median now. The median, then again, before through SO4. Okay, we need to make sure that we don't make mistakes because if we select the wrong cells, we'll get the wrong results. Okay, and we don't want that. So that's the median. We paste it. So the number that we find in the middle of the distribution is number 4 mostly over there. So that's really good because number 4 is not in the middle of the scale. Remember that the scale is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that there are lots of 5s and lots of 4s, and a 4 is in the middle of a distribution when we order them from the highest to the lowest. Now this is even better because if you see in these cases, we have that if we put all of the little numbers here from the 508 students from highest to lowest, there is a 5 in the middle, which is incredible because it means that half of the students gave teachers a number 5. Half of the students circle number 5, expressing that they think that the teachers are outstanding for these 3 aspects, which are attendance, accessibility, and knowledge of the subject. Okay? Let's look at the maximum and the minimum. Then again, we enter the formula B4, SO4. There it is. Okay. Then we copy. Then we paste. Then we paste again. So if you see, in this case, in all cases, the maximum was 5. And it's normal because there are 508 people. So this means that if only one student circles number 5, the maximum will be 5. Okay? And I think the same thing is going to happen to the minimum. If at least one student circles number 1, then the minimum is going to be number 1. And we're going to have a big range, of course. So let's calculate it. Minimum before SO4, right? There it is. And as expected, the minimum was 1. I repeat, the fact that one single student circles a number 1 is going to mean that the minimum is going to be 1. Even if there are 508 students and only one student circles number 1, the minimum is 1. Okay? So the range, if you remember, for the range is this minus this, right? Enter. And the range is 4. So here it is. We paste the results. We do the same thing here. Okay. The range is 4 in all cases. But now let's look at the standard deviation. The standard deviation is the last measure of variability that we need to calculate in order to interpret the results. So if you remember, the formula is this best, okay? And then before SO4. You can see here again, I verified that my cells are highlighted, that they are selected. Enter, and this is the standard deviation. I'm going to make it smaller again here, okay, to just 2 decimals, 0.98, so there's almost 1 point of difference in the standard deviation. And as I'm pasting the other results, the only thing that I want to remind you of is that the standard deviation is the average measure in which the individual scores differ from the mean. In other words, that the higher the standard deviation is, the less reliable our mean will be. And in this case, for all of these standard deviations that go beyond 1 point, it makes a big difference, because 1 point means the difference between excellent and good, or between bad and extremely bad. Okay, so a point is very important. And normally in those instances where we have smaller standard deviations like this one, this is one of the smallest standard, there is less variability. And if you see, everything is consistent. The mean is 4.38, okay, which is high. The mode is 5. The median is 5. The maximum is 5. And even though the range is big, there is not a lot of variability. So for this item, we find very consistent results. And this item is knowledge of the subject. So in this case, we don't have a lot of differences of opinions. But in some other cases, we're going to have a great deal of variability. For example, if we look at, let's see, I think the highest one will be this one. And there's another one that is similar. So 1.09, there's 1 point of difference. And if you see, the mean is lower, right? The mode is 5, but the median is 4. Maximum and minimum again. And then, of course, this standard deviation is showing that there is a lot of variability. So now, if you see, my results are telling me something. My results, ladies and gentlemen, are telling me that in some aspects, the teachers did a great job. And in some other aspects, they were not that great. So now, if you see here, we can interpret the results in terms of the scale. That means that when we see a number 4 or higher, it means that the students thought that the teachers were good or outstanding. And in those instances where we see something closer to 3, we will know that the students think that the students think that the teachers were average, that they were like the performance was not extraordinary. And we can see here in all of the different aspects. So now with this information, the only thing that I have to do is to look at it individually and of course explain what these results mean in terms of the descriptive statistics. Okay, so this is basically then how we analyze the data from a questionnaire with, in this case, a rating scale, but you will do exactly the same thing if it's another questionnaire, for example, with a Likert scale. Strongly agree means 1, agree means 2, undecided means 3, agree means 4, and strongly agree means 5. So this is the way we do it, and you're going to have some practice exercises. I'm going to give you this exercise so that you can do it again and see if you get the same results that I got. So that's all for the second example, and I hope that this explanation was clear, and I hope that you will succeed at practicing and obtaining your descriptive statistics. Just a final word. Remember that statistical analysis is part of piloting or post-test reports. So once we have calculated our descriptive statistics, the next step is to analyze the information very carefully in order to obtain both the main highlights and also very detailed information from our data that may allow us to make decisions concerning our students if we are already teaching, or maybe the test itself if we are in a piloting stage. And obviously, to illustrate main results or findings in a piloting or post-test report, we may use different kinds of graphic representations such as pie charts, or histograms, or line charts, or scatter plots, or bar charts, or even box plots. So, that was all I had to say about calculating statistics on a computer using Excel. Good luck with your tasks, and see you next time.